On May 24, 2026, the New York Times published an investigation alleging that Korea enforcement staff at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission were purged after raising red flags about 3 specific crypto firms connected to the Trump family. Crypto enforcement actions at the agency collapsed from over 80 cases under Biden to just 2 under the second Trump administration. Yes, you heard that correctly. 2 cases in roughly 16 months, both filed against individual operators, while at least 5 active investigations into politically connected firms were quietly dropped. But the truly extraordinary part isn't just the 3 firms that walked away with regulatory cover worth billions, it's who replaced the Korea staff and where those officials ended up the moment they cashed out of government. So today we'll walk you through exactly what the Times documented, dismantle the convenient framing that this is simple deregulation, and lay out the structural pattern you need to understand before the next blowup arrives. My name is DC and you're watching The Coin Bureau. Now, before we get into the specifics, you need to understand a piece of context that almost every headline on this story has decided to skip. For 4 years, the loudest argument in crypto was that the CFTC and the SEC under the previous administration had weaponized enforcement against the entire industry. That was the original Operation Choke Point 2.0 thesis, and to be fair, the December 2025 House Financial Services report confirmed a coordinated multi-agency campaign to debank crypto firms through informal pressure rather than formal rules. So when Gary Gensler walked out of the door, the assumption across crypto Twitter was that the war was finally over and the good guys had won. That assumption is now being tested in the most uncomfortable way possible, because the same regulatory capture machine that was pointed at the industry is still running. It has simply been pointed at a new set of targets, and the people benefiting from it are a very, very small, very specific group of politically connected insiders. Which brings us directly to what the Times actually reported. In spring 2025, 3 senior enforcement division leaders at the CFTC, the chief counsel, the deputy director, and the chief trial attorney were placed under internal investigation. The reasons given were described as vague, and none of the officials were told the specific allegations against them. By Christmas of that year, 2 additional Korea officials who had directly questioned the regulatory treatment of 3 specific firms were placed on administrative leave, barred from the office, and put under their own internal investigations. 3 more enforcement staff working on crypto cases were removed from their roles without any explanation at all. A former CFTC trial attorney named Andrew Rogers told the Times, and I quote, "There was a sustained effort to oust enforcement staff who worked on some of the agency's more significant cryptocurrency matters." Inside the agency, the message reportedly delivered to the remaining staff was even shorter. It just said, "Don't cause trouble." And while all of this was happening, the agency's overall workforce dropped 21% in a single fiscal year. At the same time, the Qcoin settlement was finalized for a number significantly lower than what the agency's own lawyers had projected and argued for internally. Existing cases were also negotiated down under pressure that was applied from the top. Now, the political appointees at the center of the story are 3 people, and the revolving door evidence on 2 of them is genuinely extraordinary. Caroline Pham, serving as acting chair of the CFTC from January through December 2025. According to the Times, she personally intervened to override Korea staff objections and fast-track approvals for the 3 firms we are about to discuss. In December 2025, she left the CFTC to become Chief Legal and Administrative Officer at MoonPay. MoonPay has a partnership with Polymarket, one of the 3 firms whose approval she championed. Bridget Wales served as a senior counsel to Caroline Pham. The Times reports that Wales circulated a pre-written memo endorsing Gemini's Titan's registration application while Korea staff were still in the middle of examining the firm's submission. In March 2026, she became general counsel at Gemini Titan, the firm whose application she had pushed through. And the current chair, Michael Selig, was confirmed in December 2025. He is currently the sole sitting commissioner at the agency. The 4 remaining seats are vacant, which means Selig has near unilateral authority over rules, settlements, and litigation with no commissioner check on any of it. These aren't loose data points. They form a documented machine. You might think that even if individual approvals were rushed, the underlying firms must have been clean enough to deserve them. But that ignores what career staff were specifically warning about. So let's start with Polymarket. Polymarket received investment from 1789 Capital, a venture firm partly owned by Donald Trump Jr., who also serves as an unpaid advisor. In 2022, the firm settled with the CFTC for $1.4 million for operating as an unregistered derivatives exchange and was forced to block US users. In 2025, after the CFTC dropped its open investigation, Polymarket spent $112 million on acquiring QCEX, a dormant CFTC-licensed exchange, and then received a no-action letter allowing it to reopen for US users. Career staff flagged that this platform lacked adequate fraud protections, and the evidence on why that concern was rational is hard to dismiss. A Columbia University study found that roughly 14% of Polymarket wallets exhibited behavior consistent with coordinated wash trading, with wash activity peaking near 60% of volume in December 2024. A Wall Street Journal analysis found that 67% of all platform profits were captured by just 0.1% of accounts, approximately 2,000 wallets. A single French trader reportedly netted $85 million on the 24 US presidential election outcome alone. A US Army soldier used classified government information to bet $33,000 on the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and walked away with roughly $400,000. And of course, Polymarket's founders publicly described the platform's tendency to incentivize people with non-public information to leak it as, quote, cool. Then there's Crypto.com. In October 2025, the company signed an exclusive partnership with Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social. That partnership launched Truth Predict, a prediction market accessible directly through Truth Social, alongside a joint venture managing a digital asset treasury denominated in Crypto.com's own Crow token. Career staff at the CFTC raised concerns that the firm was not treating small retail bettors fairly, but the company's response to the Times was that it fully abides by all federal regulations. And the third firm is Gemini Titan, an affiliate of the Gemini exchange founded by Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss. The link here is not as obvious, but the Winklevoss twins are also major financial backers of American Bitcoin Corp, a company co-founded by Eric Trump. The CFTC's career staff noted that Gemini Titan had not completed the mandatory regulatory review required before opening for business. That is the application that Bridget Wales preemptively endorsed in writing before becoming the firm's general counsel. Gemini did not respond to the Times. So, to put it simply, you have three firms, each tied to a different branch of the Trump family financial network, each receiving expedited regulatory treatment, and two of the officials who delivered that treatment are now collecting paychecks from the firms they helped clear. This brings us to the part that most coverage of this story has been too polite to say out loud. Calling this deregulation is inaccurate. Deregulation means the same rules apply to everyone, just fewer of them. What is happening at the CFTC is selective non-enforcement. The connected firms get clearance, fast-tracked approvals, and dropped investigations. Everyone else operates in an environment where the federal regulator is simultaneously suing states like Arizona, Connecticut, Illinois, New York, and Wisconsin to prevent them from enforcing prediction market rules at the state level. So the federal agency is not enforcing, and it is blocking the states from enforcing, and it is fast-tracking a specific set of politically connected players. This is the exact mirror image of Operation Choke Point 2.0. The previous regime weaponized regulators against the industry, and this regime is weaponizing the absence of regulators for a faction within the industry, which essentially makes it the same capture machine, just opposite beneficiaries and the identical structural damage. And of course, this is being done in the best interest of the American public, because that is precisely what the White House spokesman told the Times. I'll let you decide on that one. Now, before we get to the practical implications, we need to talk about who actually pays when this kind of arrangement breaks. Because the honest truth is that history is brutally consistent on this point. In November 2022, FTX collapsed, leaving an approximately $8 billion shortfall in customer funds misappropriated through Alameda Research. Courts have since ordered more than $12.7 billion in total monetary relief to victims and creditors. Sam Bankman-Fried built his entire regulatory strategy around political donations and a public reputation as the responsible adult in the room. He specifically lobbied to route Oversight to the CFTC because the CFTC was viewed as the softer regulator. He asked permission to clear and settle trades in-house, which is the exact mechanism Bernie Madoff used to hide a Ponzi scheme for decades. And when the music stopped, institutional money had largely already exited. Retail held the bag entirely. And the same pattern shows up in the 2022 lender collapses. Celsius froze approximately $4.7 billion across 1.7 million user accounts in June of that year. And here's the detail that should haunt every retail crypto holder. When the bankruptcy courts ruled, they determined that retail customers had transferred legal title of their assets to Celsius when they deposited. So they were not owners, they were unsecured creditors. They went to the back of the line. BlockFi and Voyager followed the same fate in the same window, and in February 2026, BlockFills, a firm backed by Susquehanna and CME Ventures that handled $60 billion in volume in 2025, halted withdrawals. The structural pattern does not break. It repeats time and time again. Insiders use regulatory access to scale without constraints. Retail is lured in through high yields, exciting markets, and the promise of an informational edge that turns out to belong someone else. When the model finally breaks or gets exposed, insiders capture the gains and retail captures the losses. That is the pattern in 1929, in 2008, in 2022, and the structural ingredients for the next instance of it are being assembled right now. Meanwhile, prediction market volume has exploded. Polymarket alone did over $26 billion in just the first quarter of 2026, and the broader prediction market segment is now running at roughly $21 billion a month, while expanding into a near zero enforcement environment. That is a market growing into a regulatory vacuum with documented insider trading, with documented wash trading, and with the federal regulator that is supposed to police it actively dismantling its own enforcement staff. So here's the part most channels are too scared to say. Only a very specific faction of the crypto industry actually won here. Everyone outside that faction is now exposed. Even the major exchanges lobbying for more CFTC authority are at risk here. They face a regulator that polices based on political connections instead of the law. That is a worse environment for legitimate crypto businesses than Gensler's era of regulation by enforcement. At least under Gensler, the playing field was hostile but uniform. Under this regime, the playing field tilts based on who you know and which family you can route an investment through. And the most dangerous part of all of this is the Clarity Act, which is currently advancing through the Senate and would formally designate the CFTC as the primary regulator for digital commodities. Granting expanded jurisdiction to an agency that just purged its career enforcement staff simply codifies velvet rope justice into federal law. Senator Richard Blumenthal called the CFTC, and I quote, a craven tool of prediction markets and shady crypto firms. Better Markets, a financial reform group that had previously accused Caroline Pham of brazen conflicts of interest, called the Times reporting evidence of deep structural corruption at the agency. Even House Agriculture Committee Chair Glenn Thompson, a Republican, joined ranking member Angie Craig in calling for the commission to be filed to its full 5-member capacity. The political pushback is real and it is bipartisan. And that tells you the structural concerns here are not partisan complaints. For you, the practical implications are very specific. First, watch the Clarity Act calendar. The bill needs explicit ethics provisions. It needs a cooling off period for commissioners joining regulated entities, and it must require filing the vacant seats. If it passes without those protections, it is just a structural negative for retail crypto holders, no matter what the headlines claim about it being pro-industry. Second, watch the concentration risk in prediction markets. If you're using Polymarket, Kalshi, or Truth Predict, understand that the platforms themselves are the counterparty. The fraud protections that career staff flagged as inadequate are still inadequate, and the regulator that is supposed to be watching it is not watching. Third, watch custodial exposure. The Gemini Titan situation, where a firm allegedly began operating before completing mandatory review, is the exact failure model that preceded Celsius, BlockFi, and Voyager. Self-custody for assets you're not actively trading remains the only structural defense against this category of risk. Fourth, watch the next CFTC personnel announcement. If additional commissioner seats remain vacant through the rest of 2026, that is an intentional feature and it concentrates regulatory power in a way that historical precedent suggests always ends badly. And fifth, if you want our team's read on every catalyst in this story before it hits the headlines, you should definitely sign up for the Coin Bureau newsletter. Our research team breaks down the regulatory developments, the enforcement filings, and the legislative milestones every single week, and it's completely free. The link is in the description below. It's genuinely worth it. So this is the framing question I want to leave you with. Do you trust a market where the referees were sent home and then immediately hired by the teams they used to call fouls on? Or do you believe this is a temporary phase that will correct itself before the next inevitable blow-up? Because the honest read is that the next major crypto collapse is unlikely to come from a regulator crackdown. It is going to come from a regulator that looked away while a politically connected firm built something it could not actually support. Please get highly opinionated in the comments and let me know which side of this you land on. And if you want to understand exactly how Operation Chokepoint 2.0 was constructed in the first place and why understanding the original is essential to understanding this mirror image version, then please check out our full breakdown right over here. Thank you all so much for watching and I'll see you again very soon. This is DC signing